Hello, everyone, and welcome to Planier's webinar titled How to Use AI to Support Account Management. Before we go ahead and kick things off, we're going to start off with a few housekeeping items. The first being that this webinar will be recorded. So everyone who registered will receive a copy of the recording once it has been processed. So keep a lookout for that email following this webinar. And the second is that all participant lines will be muted to maintain audio quality. That being said, we will be answering questions at the end, so please feel free to submit those throughout the webinar. We'll save time to answer as many as we can, as many as time will allow. We'll start off with a couple of quick questions. My name is Molly Presson. I'm the VP of Commercial here at Planier, and I'll hand it over to Tarek for a quick intro before we dive into the content.
I am Tarek Ilali. I am the CEO of Planier. Delighted to be with you this morning. Okay, so, it is a brand new era for, I think, brokerage as a whole and account management in particular. I think the goals behind account management have not changed in a long time. We all want to provide the broadest set of support resources, and we want to do it in the most timely manner possible. Why? Because that is what our clients ultimately want. That's what they value. The problem that we face is that account management resources are finite in that it is hard to find really good account managers. And perhaps because of that, they are expensive because these are skilled people. On top of that, brokerage and benefits brokerage in particular has always been seasonal to an extent, but that has gotten worse and worse in recent years as more and more groups decide, for reasons of deductible accumulation, HSA maximums, dependent care maximums, etc., or simply just wanting to align the benefits with other companies so that spouses can choose at the same time. They all want to go to January 1st. The problem with that is that on the one hand, we need skilled people to do this. On the other hand, we have this kind of super spike of demand around Jan 1, similar to accountants around tax time or Amazon in Christmas and Thanksgiving. And, the really bad thing is that we take these very skilled people and we need them to do manual and relatively painstaking, but not necessarily difficult work. So what's the result of all of this? The result of all of this is that our service offerings are sometimes more limited than either we or certainly our clients would like. We're often unable to respond in as timely a manner as they would desire. And, if you ask most clients what their, ideal scenario would be, it would probably be within 5 minutes. They might settle for
instantaneous.
The same day, but, getting a bunch of different issues in all at the same time. And you have to research each of those. It can actually take a while before you get back to them. And so, I think certainly while we try and respond in a timely fashion, we would like to do it faster if we could. And certainly our clients would like that.
Yeah.
Then ultimately, if we don't do those things, we run the risk of client churn. If we do those things, especially during the renewal season headed into Jan 1, where day-to-day issues don't end, but the workload goes up and the urgency on account of renewals, you run the risk of burning out your employees and losing these valued resources.
Yeah.
In our industry situation for the last 30 to 40 years. And not much has changed, largely because there was nothing that could be done to make things better. Fortunately now, through advances in technology, while this has gotten worse and worse over the last 30 to 40 years, it's all about to change for the better.
So we'll go over quickly what we're going to chat about today. But this big change that everyone is talking about is really being driven by AI. So we'll discuss what that means, what are the applications for account management in particular, and how it will positively impact the function altogether. How is account management in brokerages really going to positively change as a result of this, both for the clients, but also for the folks who are actually doing the job. And then the third piece here, top of mind for a lot of folks in brokerages, EBITDA. What is the impact to EBITDA when we talk about increasing the efficiency of our teams, allowing them to do more? Always a concern. Will this actually cost us more? So we'll go into great detail about that. And then we're very excited to be sharing a quick demo of one of Planyear's newest features. This is specifically tailored for account management, and we'll show you that shortly. So excited to bring AI as a part of our product to better serve the account management function.
Perfect. So let's talk about some of the applications of artificial intelligence in brokerage. The first one is, as we all know, we get a ton of data and it is unstructured. What do I mean by unstructured? It has not really been possible historically for machines to read this. What do I mean by that? I mean things like carrier quotes. They come in PDFs frequently. They have tons of data parameters. They have rates on them. They have lots of different plan designs. And it has been impossible really to get those into a spreadsheet or a spread in an automated fashion. The net result is, they are spat out by the carrier systems. Carrier salespeople sends it to the broker. The broker then either has a team or the account manager take it, sort of proposal by proposal, and then enter all of that information in the spreadsheet. This is hugely time consuming. And anyone who's ever entered a quote into a spreadsheet is painfully aware of what I mean.
It hurts.
Yes, it really does hurt. And, and especially when you're dealing with a late night in October and a client's where is it? And you're sitting there entering the 1,000th quote, it is very painful indeed.
And the likelihood you make an error on one of those pieces of data is very, very high.
Exactly. I mean, it's like it's tired, it's late, you're in a hurry, and one mistake, it could cost you the account. I mean, it's not
worst case scenario.
And while technology theoretically could have offered a solution to this problem, it would require carriers to do things like open up APIs and do that in a standard format where they could all be piped in. And it's hard enough to get one of them to do that, never mind all of them. And unless you can really read all of them, you're not doing the best you can for your client, because ultimately your client wants you to look at all of them and find the right one for them.
I'm certainly not holding my breath for carriers to play ball with that.
It's been a long time. APIs came out 20 years ago. They didn't do it. Done it, and I doubt they ever will, because they haven't felt the need to. So what is soul-destroying manual work and breathtaking inefficiency, in the sense that these are relatively skilled people doing a fairly mindless task with a sort of balance. It is just not a good situation. AI changes all of this because it has the potential to take the data from all the carriers, regardless of what format they send it in, and it can read it, it can structure it, it can interpret it, it can even perform computations on it, and then it can output it in a format that is easily exportable into PowerPoint, where you can present it to a client. So it can read and spread a quote, run a contribution model on it just by clicking a button, and then you click one more button and it's all exported into nice tables that you can build your presentation around. What has taken historically hours can now be done in seconds. And the difference between the way it was and the way it's going to be is artificial intelligence. To the next point, which is the ability to answer employer questions. We all get a lot of employer questions. And unfortunately, for those of us in the benefits business, those questions do not stop during the renewal season. So on top of all the spreading work on the carrier quotes, following up, doing this, doing that, the employers still have their own questions, employee claims issues, compliance questions, and other things. And they expect a timely answer. Most of them do not realize how much work renewals are And, it's not really a conversation we can have with them to tell them what that's really like. So on top of doing all of what I mentioned before, we still have these employer questions come in that they want quick, prompt, and concise and comprehensive answers to. So, let's just take one example. Let's assume we spread a proposal. They say they're interested in a different carrier because it's less expensive. And then they say, okay, fine, the plans look alike at the cursory level from the quote, but I want you to make sure that they are either the same, or if they're not the same, you tell me what those differences are. Now, for those of us who've been brokers, if we miss something and we don't tell them and an employee complains, we all know that we are in a whole lot of trouble. So this going through plan summaries line by line and then building a table of all the differences. And if you miss anything, you could potentially put the client at risk. It's tedious, it's time consuming, it's error prone, and ultimately I would go as far as to say soul destroying.
I think that's fair.
Now, imagine a world where AI does this for you and it can do it in seconds. You feed in, it already knows because it already has access to the current plan summary or SBC, and load the new one, and then it outputs a table with all the differences. Another example of this is if someone asks whether they are in compliance with the San Francisco Healthcare Ordinance, or SFHCSO, AI can pull the rules on that, look at your contributions that your employees are asked to make to your plans, and tell you whether you're covered by a safe harbor. It can then draft an answer explaining to the client what those rules are, tell them why they are in compliance with it, put it in line with the incoming email. Here's a suggested response. Nobody is suggesting it's perfect or it can do everything. Nobody is suggesting that you should have essentially a chatbot respond to a client question. But what we are suggesting is that it makes no sense for an account manager to have to go scouring around the internet to find information on the San Francisco Healthcare Ordinance, to have to go into the plans, then look and see, are they in fact in compliance with it or not based on their current contributions, then draft an answer, all of which might take hours or even a day before you respond. Imagine a world where as soon as it hits your inbox, you have your AI assistant doing that for you, essentially pulling the information around what the rules are, what the safe harbors are, and then telling you if your current contribution makes you eligible for that safe harbor. The net result is a considerable amount of time saved by your account manager and a much more rapid response for your client.
Yeah, huge time saver. And this is true, obviously, for employer questions, but thinking about this as it relates to employee support, given the breadth of knowledge that AI models have related to compliance, in addition to their ability to read plan documents, regardless of the format, AI at this point can already read the vast majority of employee questions. And the benefit of this is that AI doesn't sleep, so it can do it 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And it can do this at a marginal cost of pretty much zero. So, what this means is that not only can it be 24/7, it can also be embedded quite literally wherever employees live. So I don't know if anyone on the line has ever tried to man a benefits Slack channel. You get questions all throughout the weekend. This can be embedded directly in a Slack channel. You can do it in a mobile app, in a microsite. Currently right now, it's either support provided by the broker or the HR team, the benefits team. Let's be honest, I don't think either party considers this to be a particularly great use of their time, but increasingly what we've seen is this is something that clients just expect. Employers expect support from their broker partners to help answer the high volume of employee questions. And increasingly, brokers are using this as a differentiator to actually win business. So it's becoming more and more important to have this frontline employee support. It's important, but it's costly and challenging to provide this, given the volume of questions actually tends to be the highest during the busiest season, the enrollment window, when brokerage teams are absolutely overwhelmed with everything else going on. But AI can do literally all of this for you. And they can provide it at all hours a day. They can do it on weekends. They can do it on holidays. I think the joke is always that, brokerage teams generally don't see the holidays in fourth quarter, right? Those Christmas, New Year's, right? It's very painful. Oftentimes folks are answering calls, answering emails when they, would much rather be spending time with family, and AI can help with a huge piece of those questions, which is, pretty incredible. Having spent a long time on the phone with carriers throughout my Christmas holiday, many years in a row.
Yeah, and from the employee perspective, they want answers to their questions when they have the question. They don't
Right. When they're at the doctor, when they're, yeah.
They don't necessarily want to call. I mean, at this point, they want to basically be able to ask a question and get an answer and get it instantly. And AI has the ability to do that in the vast majority of cases.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's take a look at this actually on the plan year side and what we're doing to help, address all of the employer questions that are coming through. We'll actually kind of walk through a quick demo of our newest feature. And that feature is an AI benefits assistant for account managers. So what this means is all of your account management team will have access to a knowledgeable benefits assistant who not only is trained on general benefits knowledge, but also has access to all of the information related to each of these individual benefits programs. So all of the plan documents for each of the clients, it will be knowledgeable and able to access and reference. So what you're looking at on the screen here is the issues log. The way that this works within the plan year system is that it is integrated with email, which is a great benefit because it means nobody needs to change their existing workflows. From a change management perspective, your team still operates out of whether it's Outlook or Gmail, whatever tool they're using, and the same is true for the client. So seamless integration from that perspective. Of course, if they give you a call, you can always create a new issue on the top here. So let's dive in to see how this actually works at the individual level. So I'm going to go ahead and click on this first issue at the top here. We have an example of an employee who has reached out with concern about coverage cancellation. Anyone who has been on an email chain like this understands that it can span months and months. There can be incredible amounts of back and forth. So scroll down to give you a brief overview of what this looks like. I'm still scrolling. There's so much information here. This is an incredibly long email chain to get caught up to speed on. One of the benefits of having AI integrated into our issues tracking system is we actually have the capability to just go ahead and click this summarize button, and that's going to catch me up to speed very quickly on all of the back and forth that's happened to date related to this specific issue. In addition to that, it's actually showing me the future action items here, what we have said that we're going to follow up on in the future. So it's pulling out that most critical information and means that it saves me a ton of time getting up to speed so I can collaborate better with the rest of the team who's working on this specific issue for this specific client. Perfect. Okay, let's take a look at a few more examples of what this looks like, where the AI is actually answering, drafting up those responses to employer questions. I'm going to go ahead and click on this next one. We'll open it up, make my screen a little bit bigger here. You can see that we've got a question in from one of our clients, Next Directive. They're asking us if we can confirm the max annual salary coverage by current short-term disability and long-term disability plans. Obviously this is a calculation that we would need to do, but I'm short on time here. I'm actually going to go ahead and see if we can rely on the AI benefits assistant to help me respond to this question. So go ahead and click the AI button here. Let's draft a new AI response. And it's actually doing those calculations for me. So instead of doing that myself, AI is drafting, not only doing the calculations, but also drafting that response, doing so in a format that makes sense relative to the question asked. I can just go ahead and read that over and then go ahead and click send. Of course, we're always going to let folks know that this is drafted by AI, so we'll ask that you confirm that that information looks correct from your perspective. Everything looks good. We'll go ahead and send that email, and that gets sent along to the client. Wonderful. Okay, moving on to the next question here. It's funny, Mark already has made reference to SFHCSO. This is something that's very painful for the folks in the Bay Area. um, Probably a visceral reaction from everyone on the line who's located in that geography. So we've got a HR manager. They're looking for guidance on this local regulation in San Francisco. So this is another example where AI can be incredibly helpful. I go ahead and click reply. I'm gonna go ahead and click the AI button here. We'll draft a new response. And we are getting a message, no similar responses found. That means historically, you've not answered questions related to SFHCSO. However, the system is actually trained on general benefits intelligence, so it can still answer those questions, even if it does not have a previous answer to rely on. So let's go ahead and see what sort of draft they're going to come up with here. Looks like they do have that information. And Tarek, maybe you can speak to some of the training that happens behind the scenes for these models and how they're able to reference this information.
Yeah, so we had an issue tracking system, that we had built and several firms were using. And over the course of time, we got a pretty good idea of the type of questions that employers have. We then took a large language model and essentially populated it with a lot of benefits type questions that come up a lot, as well as with a lot of just general benefits information. Further, it has the ability to go into the plan documents for a particular group and be able to extract information, be it from a certificate of coverage, be it from an SBC, be it from a sold proposal the prior year. So the system not only has a huge amount of benefits knowledge, but what it also has is the ability to know what a customer or client's individual benefits program is doing. And when you put those two things together, what you find is you can answer a huge number of account management type questions. Now, when I look at technology, I don't just look at what can it do. What I also look at is how easy is it to use and why would a user actually adopt it? I'm sure all of you have purchased technology before and then you have struggled to get your teams to actually use it.
Mm-hmm.
Little anecdote about this. Just in full transparency, we have not released it to the general public yet, but we do have a select group of account managers who are beta testers. Well, when my development team were releasing a new version of it, and we took this thing down, it was really interesting, but there were about 6 of them, and 4 had called within 30 minutes saying, "Where on earth is this thing?" But they had become so accustomed to using it and having their assistant, it was literally like, they had an assistant, a person who was helping them with their groups. And when we took it down, it was gone. And, one of the things I measure with technology is how easy is it to use? And this is pretty easy, which in turn results in, will people actually adopt it? And then having adopted it, if you take it away from them, will they miss it? And as my engineering team learned to its cost, within 30 minutes, they had a bunch of people saying, "Where the heck is this thing?" To which their response was, "Well, it's in beta right now. We're doing a new release." And their response is, "I got clients to serve. What do you mean? I don't understand what that means. Give it back." And so it was pretty interesting. But I think all of them would agree that once they started using this thing, they could not imagine going back to the days when they didn't have it. At least that's what they expressed to us.
Oh, I believe it. I mean, I think a lot of people use their inboxes as a task list, all of the things that they need to follow up on. And if it's not easy to answer, you mark it on red, you star it for follow-up, and then it just builds and builds and builds. And if you have enough time to do this research, all of a sudden you have this very overwhelming task list that you're looking at. And this, allows you to top of it, answer it much more quickly. And, quite frankly, just kind of ease your entire workload overall. So I would definitely believe that they would be begging for it back. Let's go ahead and take a look at another couple of these. Go back to the general log here, click back. So I know we have another example here, time off policy. And this is something that happens, I think, fairly regularly get a question from, one of your clients, and they're looking at something that's, related to something like a time off policy, right? It's not a traditionally brokered benefit, but these questions come up and they rely on us generally for that type of information. Go ahead and click reply, draft the AI response, and then we see no similar responses found. But they can actually answer this from just general knowledge, not even really specifically related to, employee benefits. So let's go ahead and draft that AI response. And you can see here, we've got a quick summary.
Now, I guess my question is, could a human figure out how to do this? Yes. But how long would it take to go find the source information, draft a response that is grammatically correct, and then with somebody? The answer is it probably will take them maybe 30 minutes, maybe 15 minutes, maybe 30 minutes, you decide. But the fact is, given they have other things to do, and given they have a volume of these things coming in, how long from the time they first read it to the time they actually get the time to respond to it? The answer generally that we found, many of the folks that we were working with, was, within 24 hours, the client will get a response. The interesting thing about this is when you click that button, and probably about 70% of the time, the answer is either, good to go or pretty damn close to good to go. That 24-hour response went down to a 1-hour response. And part of the reason they were calling and screaming, what is this thing, is because after a couple of weeks, the clients had got used to that. And they were terrified as to what would happen if the clients noticed they went back to 24 hours, and they did not want to find out, nor did they want to do the work. So it's not just that you make your folks more productive. It's not just that they could probably support more clients. It's also that you can cut the response times drastically, because these types of questions, AI can pull the information from various sources, put it in front of you, you just look at it, edit it, and go.
Yeah. And of course, there are those examples. Let's take a look at one more. There, of course, those examples where, potentially this is not information that the model has been trained on. So, in this example, they're looking on an update on wellness credits, right? Were you able to obtain those from the carrier? So if I go ahead and click the AI button to draft a new response, you can see no similar responses found. It looks like we actually don't have any examples of this within the current issues that have been answered within this brokerage. But what the system is asking me to do, just provide a few bullet points. Oftentimes, we've got the basic facts, right? We have the information, but drafting that response in a way that's nice, beautiful, it's client facing, takes quite a bit of time to do. So, let's say I have that kind of basic information. I can just plug in here. I'm going to save and draft a new AI response based on that. And then the system will take that information and draft a response that's, ready to be sent, ready to be client facing. So just from my few bullet points here, all of a sudden we have a very, very well thought out answer that's ready to send. Huge time saver. I think when we're moving very quickly, one of the most challenging things is to make sure that we're responding back in a way that makes our clients, feel like they're getting white glove service, feel like they're being, very well cared for. And with just a couple of bullet points, I was able to turn that around and make that happen. Perfect. Okay, so at this point, I'm going to transition back. Give me a moment here, and I will go back to the presentation.
And
second.
Point out while Molly's doing that is that all the data from your client at the client level and at the brokerage level is segregated. So, we train and the models learn essentially based on an individual client, so it knows that certain data, and for example, for client X, they have plans Y and BCC and COCs, A. But also for your firm, we segregate those answers. It's not cross-pollinated across. General knowledge is that we put into the AI model. However, your firm-specific stuff is segregated, so it's cross-pollinated across. So, we adhere to the strictest norms of data security.
Yeah, which is of course important. Obviously, there's a lot of information that's going into the system, and the more information we can feed to it, the better it's able to answer those questions. But very, very important, obviously, to make sure that that data is segregated and protected. Great point.
The more you use it, the smarter it gets. And so,
Right.
that's a great many questions already. But what we have also observed, even in the limited sample size that we have so far, is the users are observing the more we use it, the better this thing gets, which is great. So, honestly, since we're just at the beginning of this journey, we're only just scratching the surface of what it'll ultimately be capable of.
Yeah, it's beyond exciting. We're going to switch gears and talk about the actual impact to account management right now. And we're seeing that firsthand as we begin to demo some of these solutions with the brokerages that we work with today. But thinking about that future impact and where AI is going is incredible. So let's dive into that impact. I think first things first. Instead of spending, we've described the amount of manual work in this role, right? It's absolutely massive. So instead of spending those hours doing that incredible amount of manual work, which to be honest with you, it's much harder to do that than I think any of the clients actually appreciate. Very repetitive, boring in nature, let's be honest. Now, not only can you answer those questions without costing your team valuable time, but they can also be answered almost instantly. So your team gets the time back, and from the client perspective, they get an almost immediate answer, right? They get an improved kind of service level offering, which is incredible to be able to do both of those at the same time. Normally, you overtax your teams when you actually provide that increased level of service. The net result is really you can provide high quality, almost instant responses to your clients, free up your team to focus on relationship building, on strategic initiatives. When you interview folks for this role, the last thing that people say is, I'm here, I love to, input data manually into spreadsheets, right? Nobody comes to do this job because of that. They come because they like to help people generally. Most account managers are incredibly savvy with people. They do a great job building those relationships, and they're very strategic, right? They work long-term on these, 5-year benefit strategies for their clients, and that's where they want to spend their time. So you can give them the ability to do that, and ultimately you can do more for your client. With the existing workforce that you have, it frees them up to actually service more groups, which is incredible. Oftentimes that is sacrificed.
And one of the challenges with hiring good account managers is they need to be right side of the brain people, but then
Yeah.
we're left side of the brain work.
Yeah.
Combo defined. Now, if you think about it, the AI assistant is perfect for left side work, and that for right side work. And the right side folks are better at building relationships with their clients, and they'll have more time to do it, and they'll be happier. So there are many positives, right, to essentially giving someone an assistant to do the things they least like doing, to excel at the more important things that they're really good at.
Yeah, absolutely. Very much a similar note to what you were just mentioning. Stripping out those mundane, labor-intensive tasks, it actually makes the job more interesting, right? It's less painful. This increases the job satisfaction, but it also increases employee retention over time, right? You get folks who are incredibly burned out in the busy season. They don't want to stick around for years and years. And quite frankly, can you blame them? But when you eliminate that, it makes the job ultimately a lot more enjoyable to do. So, at the same time, increases the output, right? If you have someone who's doing all of the manual work that you used to do, you can scale yourself. You can go do all of that strategic work that otherwise, we never like to admit this, but in the busy season, a lot of that gets deprioritized because there are, just necessary mundane tasks to running benefits programs that have to be done in order to make it successful. So ultimately, the client gets a broader level of support. Those folks who get to focus on more strategic initiatives, that benefits the client as well. And it's more timely. They're getting faster responses. They're getting the answers to the questions that they need much more quickly than they would be able to otherwise. Ultimately improves client satisfaction, and long-term, it also has a huge impact on client retention, which that has a huge impact on the bottom line for the brokerage as well. So lots of positives here. which is a good segue into our last section here with EBITDA. What does this mean overall in terms of, not just client satisfaction, but also what does it mean for the bottom line?
And really here, if I were to say, we can increase your service level offering, and we're going to decrease your operating costs, I think most people would say, yeah, right. To do that? And that would be an entirely fair question. And the answer is, in the service business, it's generally impossible to do that unless you have technology that can be used as a force multiplier. Up until recently, that technology does not exist, but now in the era of artificial intelligence, it does, and it exists in spades. So where previously such a solution did not exist, now it does. And given the value it provides, its adoption and its broad adoption is inevitable. And we are seeing that across multiple companies that we're working with. For brokers,
almost every sector too, right? It's pervasive. Yeah.
And honestly, once they get a hold of, as I mentioned earlier, this AI stuff, they will give it up.
Yeah.
For brokers, this presents both an opportunity if you adopt it early, and a threat if you don't, because either way, it's going to get adopted very, very quickly. We are seeing that across the entire economy. And it is raising the bar on what you can do for your clients. And clients in this industry in particular are not shy about looking for the best and being make changes in order to find it. So, the way I characterize this is going to revolutionize this industry. It's going to happen way faster than people think. And, either you can seize it as an opportunity to grow your business, or you run the risk of being left behind and attacked by others who can, undercut you both in terms of the breadth of services they're offering, but also in terms of the cost that they, or the amount that they can charge. And that's a place to be. So, that, whether we like it or not, with artificial intelligence, that genie is out of the bottle and it is never going to go back in again.
Yeah, it's exciting, ultimately.
It is. And, the great thing about this is you don't have to be a technology expert to know how to adopt it, right? It's
right
within email, which is where people live already and they know how to use. And, it's just click a button and it starts to give you this answer. I mean, one of the account managers that we had spoken to referred to it a bit like magic. We couldn't quite believe it could do this, except that it can. And so, hopefully we have given you, a sense for this today. But what I would encourage you all to do is to give it a try in the months ahead, because I think you'd be pretty floored at what it can actually do now, and what it will be able to do in the future, and the not too distant future will be even more than that. Because the great thing about this is it keeps evolving, it keeps improving, it keeps learning, and it keeps getting better and better. And we're only just at the beginning and scratching the surface of what it can really do.
Yeah, incredible. Well, I've been watching the chat. We do have a couple of questions on the line. So I know we promised we'd make some time for this. So we'll go through as many of these as we can. A few questions here. First question, when is this available? I assume this is related to the demo that we provided.
So the plan currently is to make it generally available. We do have some people who are testing it currently. And that feedback has been very good, but we don't release things until we know they're ready for prime time. And so the expectation is that this will be available before this year. So it is looking at a release date in Q4 2023. And that's for general availability.
Next question was, how easy is this to use and deploy? As someone who uses the system quite regularly, I'd say it's very easy. Quite literally, sits on top of the email inbox. So you're not really changing your workflow whatsoever. In terms of training, very much kind of what we walked through today. You're quite literally responding through leveraging that AI. What did the account manager call it? Magic button. So it's kind of the beauty of the system, honestly, is the ease of adoption there. And that's something that we were very thoughtful about when we put this tool into place. we knew, we were out of a brokerage. We knew we tried to implement systems in the past. And anytime you ask someone to change their existing workflow, particularly if it's client facing, you face a ton of friction to adoption. So that was very intentional. And because of that, it does make it quite a lot easier to adopt. Tarek, anything that you would add there?
The last thing I say is this system has been built specifically for brokerage. We're not trying to take a CRM like Salesforce that is used
Right.
for industry and then offer it to brokerage as well. Because when you do that, one, it never quite does what you need and has so much functionality layered in it. And Salesforce is a wonderful product. We use it ourselves. But the reality is one of the challenges is figuring out how to not only use it yourself, but train others to use it. And part of that is it's built for everything. This has been for a specific purpose, which is brokerage. And so what that means is its workflows are highly tailored towards the issues brokers face, and we could strip out all sort of this general stuff that other industries might use. And the net result, therefore, is that it is actually relatively easy for brokerage account teams to use, understand, and adopt.
Yeah, absolutely. Next question was actually about the quality of the AI responses. How do you quality control them? I know a lot of folks have interacted with consumer versions of these ChatGPT, for example. It's always a concern they're gonna respond with some sort of wacky answer, or they're making something up out of nothing. How have we built the system essentially to control for that?
Well, I think the big thing is the system, this is designed as an AI assistant. It is not designed as a human replacement. So
right.
The system has tight guardrails around it on the employee side. Either it can answer or it can't. If it can't, it refers to the employee support team, be it within the brokerage firm or the employer. With the majority, certainly over 75% of the questions are relatively simple, and it can answer them with that high degree of confidence. On the employer side, let's be clear, this is not designed to be an automated response system. What this is designed to be is an assistant for every account manager so that it can look up information, it can draft responses, it can take simple requests and run basic computation, right? Imagine it being, you hire an analyst, and essentially you give every account manager an analyst. That analyst will be doing, it will ultimately be supplied to the account manager to look at and say, yep, that looks good, send it out. Essentially the same guardrails exist around when you hire an analyst. Their job is to provide leverage to the account managers, the net result of which is they will be able to handle more accounts, they will be able to provide more comprehensive responses, they will be able to provide more prompt responses. But you have those exact same guardrails around it, which is it does the work, but it is subject to human review before you send it out.
Yeah, I know that's important, especially because these are relationships ultimately, right, with the clients. Everyone wants to be able to kind of put their own language on it, put their pleasantry on it. So important that they have the ability to control the response ultimately, add their own flair to it before they go ahead and click send. Of course, the system learns over time more and more how to best respond, but they'll always have the ability to control that. Wonderful. Well, I know we have a few more questions coming in. Really, really appreciate everyone's time and attention today. For those folks who have questions who did not get answered, I encourage you all to reach out to sales@planyear.com. You can also visit us at planyear.com and go ahead and click on the Contact Us button. We're more than happy to get someone connected with you to answer those questions. Otherwise, thank you so much, everyone. Great speaking with you all today. Hope everyone has a great rest of your day.
So much. Bye-bye.